This video is sponsored by Skillshare. A few years ago, I realized that I needed to make some changes in my life. Without getting too specific, I wasn't taking good care of myself mentally or physically, and I had a lot of really counterproductive and often destructive habits. Now, I'm usually good at recognizing problems in my life and developing solutions to them, but I often need to seek advice or do some research. And at that time, I needed to find a way to do that was free. So around about that time, I became interested in self-help and personal development content. I'd check out books from the library, I'd watch YouTube videos, anything to get some pointers on how to improve myself. A lot of people describe the entire self-help industry as a huge scam. This idea that these so-called life coaches and motivational speakers offer misleading or incomplete information that doesn't actually help anyone. And supposedly people pay their hard-earned money for these books and seminars while getting nothing of value in return. You might argue that if self-help content worked, then the self-help industry itself would eventually have no purpose. Now, I'm still working on a lot of things, but I've definitely improved myself in many important ways over the years. I can't definitively say that the content I consumed is part of the reason why, but I will say that many of the ideas that were shared to this day seem to me like good advice. Also, a lot of it was bullshit. So, like most things, it's complicated. Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
Hey guys, I finally got one of those fancy join buttons on my YouTube channel. It's another great way to support me and my content if you so desire. That's all, just wanted to let you know that. So to a lot of people, self-help has become kind of a cliche and trite phrase, so you often see more modern terms like self-improvement or personal development. Whatever it's called, it's a very broad genre, perhaps too broad to even be considered its own genre. But you might know what I mean in general. Books, videos, streams, talks, seminars, all that include purported advice on topics like finance, relationships, or health and well-being. The common thread throughout all these topics is this notion that conventional wisdom has failed us, and by making some simple changes in your mindset and behavior, at least simple enough to fit into a single book, you can quickly transform your life. Now, for better or for worse, I'm the type of guy that likes to see results. It's really hard for me to learn a skill, work on a project, or develop a habit if I don't see at least incremental progress along the way. A great example of this is I actually own several guitars because I decided a long time ago that I was going to learn how to play. But come to find out, that shit's hard, and you kind of have to struggle through a lot of frustration and failure before you come anything close to being able to sound like you know what you're doing. Or at least that was my experience. So I tried on and off for years and years to get better, but just could never keep up with it. So if anyone wants to hear me alternate between the A minor and E minor chords, I know how to do that pretty good, but that's about it. Isn't that right, Sir Applesauce? So I can understand the appeal of easy methods for quick results. And this type of thing might seem too good to be true, but sometimes you can begin to see results quickly if you're using the correct process. For example, say you have two chess players who just play each other for fun and don't know much about theory or strategy. But if one day you pull one of them aside and say, hey, try to control the center of the board, develop your knights and bishops early, and then castle to protect the king, that player is going to start winning a lot more than the other one, instantly. Now you could say life is a lot more complicated than the game of chess. I don't know though, chess is pretty fucking complicated. But I do think that sometimes very simple changes can be made in our lives that do have a major impact. I've historically been really bad at saving money. It's hard for me to conceive of money that I'm not allowed to spend. It's like, I see it, it's there, it's mine. What do you mean I can't spend it? So once I started getting a little income a few years ago, I came up with a solution to make it so that I don't see it. I created an online savings account and set up an automatic monthly transfer. I rarely looked at this account, and while I rationally knew it existed, it didn't register to me subconsciously as money I'm allowed to spend, unless there's an emergency. Didn't even think about it. Because of literally spending 4 minutes setting up an online savings account, I became a person who saves money, which for me was a huge development. That worked for me, it may not work for you. And that's one of the problems with self-help content, actually. A lot of it suggests one-size-fits-all solutions to people's problems. Now, it's likely that something that worked for one person will probably work for some other people, so there's nothing wrong with offering suggestions. But a lot of these self-help gurus present themselves as having the secrets to life in the universe, not just people merely offering advice. A lot of times you can analyze a product by looking at trends among the people who consume and engage with it. And when it comes to self-help, you often find people who are pretty much addicted to it. They spend ridiculous amounts of money on books, seminars, and other materials. They quote the catchphrases of their favorite authors, and they treat their advice as if it's gospel. There's an issue though when someone consumes so much of this content but never seems to reach a point where they don't need it anymore. A sure sign of a predatory, unethical business model is one that creates or perpetuates the problem you're paying to solve. For example, payday loan companies are, in my opinion, despicable because they loan people money that they know the people likely won't be able to pay back. So the next month they offer to loan those people more money in order to pay back the previous loan, plus a ridiculous amount of interest. And thus a cycle begins. Seriously, why is that legal? Some people say the self-help industry is guilty of this, albeit in a less conspicuous way. In order for the self-help industry to thrive, there needs to be enough people out there who either believe or can be convinced that there's something wrong with them, and who can also be convinced that spending money or doing some other beneficial action can fix whatever that is. So it's advantageous for these self-help gurus to perpetuate feelings of inadequacy and failure within its customer base. And this definitely happens. The before and after weight loss photos, the guy talking to you in front of his mansion and fleet of Lamborghinis, the muscle-bound guy surrounded by supermodels. It's all designed to make you feel inadequate and ineffectual. Now that in and of itself sucks, but the feeling can be compounded when you actually try these products and realize that you didn't actually make $10,000 this month, or didn't actually lose 50 pounds, or didn't magically cure your anxiety and depression. So part of the way the self-help industry perpetuates itself is by convincing people that they're lacking in some area and then offering unrealistic solutions which can then make people feel even more flawed. In many ways, the self-help industry thrives on the back of America's unique brand of capitalism. This idea that if there's some kind of shortcoming in your life, it's because you're doing something wrong. The game's fair, you just have to play it correctly. But of course the game isn't fair. Your plight in life and the difficulty associated with achieving your goals is going to change drastically depending on your background, your financial situation, your race, your gender, your genetics, your age, whether you're disabled or have a mental illness. And any guru that leaves that part out isn't telling you the whole story. But that's not really unique to this industry, I guess. Middle to upper class, neurotypical, able-bodied, cis-hetero white men are considered the default human for most things. But most of the time, I don't think it's a matter of misplaced demographics. So far, I frame this as self-help gurus using unethical methods to make money off unhappy people. But those people are still people. They have brains and agency. They make choices for themselves. I don't generally have a problem with paying for books and videos and seminars and things like that. Those things take work to create, and I generally think people ought to be paid for doing work. I also have no intention of telling people how to spend their own money. The thing that we have to consider is that these people continue to pay for this content because the industry continues to give them exactly what they want. I've complained a lot about how cynical and sad social media can be. There's often an inclination towards pessimism and anger, and the mere suggestion of being kind and patient and searching for happiness can literally make people mad, as if positivity is somehow unreasonable. Now, social media magnifies these concepts, but I think that's a common reaction for unhappy people. And unhappy people are the target audience for the self-help industry. So when an industry creates content that not only encourages you to feel inadequate, but also fails to deliver results, making you feel even more hopeless, for some people, that's exactly what they thrive on. Most people don't really want to change if they can't wave a magic wand and make it happen overnight. Now, most savvy people these days see the old school self-help types like Dr. Phil and Tony Robbins as living memes who are hard to take very seriously. But any smart business person evolves with the time. And while the social media generation may not be in Tony Robbins' target audience, the self-help industry, as I mentioned, now rebranded as personal development, lives on. Human brains like stories. We like things that make sense, that can be unpacked and explained, that have established beginnings and satisfying ends. And this isn't a bad thing. This way of thinking helps us understand and analyze the world in a coherent way. The problem is sometimes the story doesn't quite line up with reality. But our brains want to believe the story because that's what appeals to us. And this unconscious preference humans have for stories is taken advantage of in numerous ways. Again, not always a bad thing. YouTubers like myself, we frame our videos so that they have a beginning, middle, and end. We use storytelling techniques like symbolism and foreshadowing, even in non-fiction video essays. And we do it in part for our own profit. By the way, check out my new Sir Applesauce t-shirt. But a thing that I've tried to stress over and over again is that I'm not some expert or guru. I'm just a dude with some thoughts. And maybe being likable and okay at putting ideas together has made my thoughts a little more popular than some other people's, but I think of myself as just another person contributing to the conversation. So you have to understand that people who create content that's supposed to teach you something might not actually be experts on that thing. They might just be good storytellers and good business people. But at the same time, being a good storyteller and having good ideas are not mutually exclusive. Ironically, a lot of that same cynicism and negativity bias that I mentioned before can also be the reason people avoid taking advice from others. It's a weird paradox. Some people get addicted to fixes that don't work because it reinforces their own unhappiness, while others never trusted it in the first place. But I'm a big proponent of seeking out help if the source is reliable. So it's up to us as consumers of content to figure out when we're actually getting good advice. Here's a few tips that I learned in my experience with the self-help rabbit hole. Number one, if someone tells you that significant, long-standing change is easy or fast, they're probably selling you snake oil, because it pretty much never is. Real self-improvement is an ongoing, gradual process. You're not going to transform your entire personality overnight. You're not going to get rich quick. You're not going to lose 80 pounds in a month. Now, you can become a better person. You can improve your financial situation. You can become more physically fit, but that takes time and commitment. And again, depending on your background, that could be much harder or much easier. Number two, a good way to figure out if advice is bunk, especially advice related to health or psychology, is if it has no basis in science. A lot of self-help content tries to increase the perceived credibility of their claims by making dubious connections to science. Maybe the most famous example of this is the law of attraction, as promoted by best-selling books like The Secret. It's the idea that positive or negative thoughts can directly cause positive or negative experiences. This is often explained using sciencey sounding things like the energy of electrical brainwaves or metaphysical quantum mechanics. And of course, this is true in a superficial sense, like if you're nice to people, they're more likely to be nice back to you. But the idea that you can create literal positive energy in your brain that attracts other positive energy has no basis in science. It's made up. And I'm not saying that the person you take advice from has to be a scientist or be quoting science literature all the time. Different people have different styles of communication, and sometimes things are worth considering even if they haven't been definitively proven. But sometimes people just make shit up, so keep an eye out for that. Number three, if you're still paying for basic advice, you're fucking up. Before the social media era, gurus and experts could get away with keeping their content behind a paywall because really there was no other easy way to disseminate it. These days, it is easy and basically free to share information with a large audience. So any person whose goal in life is to help people improve themselves should be doing it largely without charging for it. I kind of feel this way about content in general. Now, if you have a premium product that costs a decent amount of money to organize, market, and or produce that you think will bring value to people, like a book or a documentary or a device or a speaking event, I have no problem with charging money for that. And usually you build customers for those premium products based on the value you've brought to people with your free content. But if you see a supposed guru who only has a website with no useful information on it, where all the real content is locked behind paywalls, I'd be very suspicious of that. In fact, and I'm going to digress a little bit here, but in my opinion, it's borderline immoral to lock personal development advice behind paywalls. Because either the strategies you suggest don't work, which makes you a grifter, or they do work, meaning you have an opportunity to make someone's life better and you're refusing to do so until they pay you, which just seems shitty to me. It's similar to why I think healthcare should be free. That's a whole nother messy conversation. And again, getting paid for time and effort and materials is fine, which is why it's cool that things like AdSense and brand deals and Patreon exist, because it allows independent creators to get paid for their time and effort without having to put their content behind a paywall. I really do think there's some great content out there that could be classified as self-help. Brené Brown's work on vulnerability and empathy is science-based and inspiring. Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Chef, single-handedly got me interested in learning how to cook and made me rethink my process of acquiring new skills in general. So there is good stuff out there. You just have to be diligent in finding it. In general, though, I've found that the self-help industry makes grandiose promises and under-delivers on the results. In reality, if you have personal issues, rather than trusting a self-proclaimed guru, you should consider investing in a licensed professional whose job is actually to help people and not to sell books. If you have health problems, see a doctor or therapist. If you have money problems, speak with a financial counselor or planner. If you want to be healthy or get in shape, speak with a personal trainer or nutritionist. Of course, sometimes we don't have the budget for these things, I understand. Although I do suggest really thinking about where your financial priorities lie. Sometimes I can't afford it or I don't have time for it basically just means it's not a priority for me. But overall, in my experience, personal development is about creating better habits. You have to remove yourself from situations that create bad habits and put yourself into the correct mindset to create good ones. It takes time and effort and willpower. It's hard. And anyone who tells you otherwise is probably trying to rip you off. That's just me though. What do you think? Thanks for watching, and thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, business, technology, and so much more. With a premium membership, you get unlimited access to high-quality classes on a variety of topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Since there is a lot of misleading and unsophisticated advice out there, as we discussed, it's important to find good sources of practical information and learning tools. Skillshare is one way you can do that, especially with its large selection of productivity classes, like this one by Rich Armstrong, encouraging people to take the challenge of being creative for 100 consecutive days. An annual subscription to Skillshare is less than $10 a month, so it's pretty affordable. But if you'd like to try it out, they're allowing me to hook up my viewers with 2 months of Skillshare for free. To sign up, just visit the link in the description and get 2 months of unlimited access to thousands of classes for free. And remember, by supporting sponsors like Skillshare, you not only get access to a great service, but you also support me and help me take my content to the next level.